the battle between DeWanna Bonner, Alyssa Thomas versus Asia Wilson. Question: are we talking about 3 of the 4 most unlikable athletes that this league has to offer? Question mark? In one damn finals?
Asia Wilson thought Game 2 of the WNBA Finals would be her moment to shine. Instead, she got a front row seat to the most embarrassing night in recent league history. The defending MVP and face of the Las Vegas Aces walked onto the court expecting roaring crowds and packed stands.
Well, I got some bad news. Number one, I don't think none of y'all are doing any pre-WNBA prep. I don't think none of y'all are fired up for no games. None of that. You're in fact, I believe y'all don't care. I think y'all care about the drama around it. I do believe that, but I don't think you care about the events itself.
What she found was a ghost town that would make a Tuesday night preseason game look electric. Empty seats stretched across entire sections. Rows upon rows of gray plastic chairs stared back at the players during warmups. The cameras desperately tried to avoid wide shots because the optics were absolutely brutal. This was supposed to be the crown jewel of the WNBA season, but it looked more like a high school scrimmage that nobody cared about. Wilson's frustration was impossible to hide. By halftime, she was visibly steaming. Cameras caught her slamming towels on the bench and muttering under her breath. Every missed shot seemed to fuel her anger even more. But this wasn't just about basketball anymore. This was about pride, ego, and the crushing realization that the league she thought she controlled had completely slipped through her fingers.
Wow. If ever there was proof that the Caitlin Clark fans / Fever fans are now the overwhelming majority of the fandom, look at ticket prices for finals games.
The arena staff looked bored out of their minds. Cheerleaders danced to empty sections. The sound system blasted music that echoed off vacant seats. Even the hot dog vendors probably sold more food at Little League games. The whole scene was so pathetic that social media users started posting pictures faster than the players could score points. Wilson kept glancing up at those empty sections during timeouts. Her expression told the whole story. Confusion mixed with rage, mixed with something that looked a lot like panic. This was her house, her league, her championship, yet somehow it felt like playing in front of cardboard cutouts would have generated more energy.
Holy hell, there's $35 seats right there. Right there. Plenty of good seats available. $46, $42.
The worst part was knowing exactly why this was happening. Everyone in that building knew the reason for the silence. One name hung over the entire evening, even though she wasn't anywhere near the court. Caitlin Clark's absence had sucked all the life out of what should have been the biggest basketball event of the year. Wilson's competitive fire had always been her trademark, but tonight it looked different. Instead of inspiring teammates, her frustration seemed to spread across the entire team. Players were walking through plays. The energy was flatter than week-old soda, and with every empty section visible on camera, Wilson's mood got darker and darker. By the fourth quarter, her body language screamed defeat even though the scoreboard was still competitive. She wasn't just losing a game anymore, she was watching her entire identity as the league's premier superstar crumble in real time.
This should scare the league to death. With DeWanna Bonner, Alyssa Thomas, and the Mercury in the finals against Asia Wilson and the Aces, will you be locked in watching this series? Question mark. Yes or no? Hit the poll. 4% of brave souls said yes. 96% said hell to the no.
The silence in that arena wasn't just about poor ticket sales. It was a referendum on everything she thought she represented. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. Just months earlier, Caitlin Clark was packing arenas so tight that fire marshals probably had nightmares. Every single Indiana Fever home game sold out faster than concert tickets for Taylor Swift. Scalpers were charging hundreds of dollars for nosebleed seats.
Guys, if the Fever and Caitlin Clark was playing in a finals game, let's say against the Mercury, with all that drama around there, Would there be a single ticket less than $300? Now, I mean, honestly, a single ticket less than $300. I don't think so. I think you'd have courtside seats go for $5,000.
Courtside spots went for thousands. The energy was so electric that you could feel it through the television screen. Now compare that to Game 2 of the finals. Tickets were going for $35. $35 for a championship game featuring the defending MVP and the reigning champions. You could literally buy a decent dinner for the same price as watching the supposed pinnacle of women's basketball. The contrast was so stark that it would have been funny if it wasn't so devastating for everyone involved. Clark had turned every road game into a spectacle too. Opposing arenas would fill up just to watch her play. Fans who had never heard of the WNBA before were suddenly buying jerseys and learning player names. She brought an entire generation of basketball fans into the league without even trying. The cultural impact was undeniable and massive. Meanwhile, back in reality, Wilson and her teammates were playing to sections that looked like they had been hit by a neutron bomb. The cameras kept showing these wide shots of empty seats that stretched on forever. It was honestly embarrassing for everyone involved. The league had spent years claiming they were growing and thriving, but this looked more like a charity event that nobody wanted to attend. The announcers tried their best to stay positive. They talked about elite defense and championship experience, but you could hear the strain in their voices. How do you hype up a finals game when half the building is empty? How do you sell excitement when the atmosphere feels like a library during finals week? Wilson's teammates seemed to feed off her negative energy. Instead of stepping up to fill the leadership void, they all looked defeated. The ball movement was sluggish. Defensive rotations were late. Even basic plays that they had run thousands of times looked sloppy and uninspired. It was like watching a completely different team than the one that had dominated all season long. The real kicker though, Clark's name was trending on social media throughout the entire game. People weren't talking about Wilson's performance or the championship implications. They were making jokes about how different the atmosphere would be if the rookie from Indiana was actually playing. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Fans online were posting side-by-side photos of fever games versus this finals disaster. The difference was night and day. One showed packed houses with fans on their feet screaming. The other showed what looked like a morgue with basketball hoops. The message was crystal clear without anyone having to say it directly. Wilson had to know what was happening on social media. Players always checked their phones during timeouts and halftime. Seeing her name attached to empty arena memes while Clark got praise for games she wasn't even playing in must have been absolutely soul-crushing for someone with Wilson's competitive pride. But wait, it gets even more brutal. A fan poll that went viral during the game asked one simple question: are you watching this WNBA Finals series? The results were absolutely devastating. Out of thousands of responses, only 4% said yes. 4%. That means 96% of basketball fans couldn't be bothered to tune in for the championship of women's basketball. The comments section under that poll was even more savage. People weren't just saying no, they were explaining exactly why they had zero interest. One user wrote that they would rather watch paint dry. Another said, "Wake me up when Caitlin gets back." The responses kept pouring in with the same theme over and over again. Without Clark, the WNBA was basically invisible to mainstream sports fans. Social media turned into a roasting session that never ended. Memes flooded every platform faster than Wilson could miss her next shot. Users posted photos of the empty sections with captions about historic moments if you can find the fans. Others joked that the loudest cheer of the night came from the janitor turning on his vacuum cleaner after the game. Not only that, but fans started comparing ticket prices to everyday items just to mock how cheap they had gotten. Someone posted a screenshot showing finals tickets for less than a combo meal at McDonald's. Another user said you could buy 2 Big Macs and still have change left over instead of watching this disaster unfold in person. The atmosphere inside the arena was so quiet that you could literally hear the basketball bouncing during free throws. Television viewers started commenting that it sounded like a church service instead of a championship game. The lack of crowd noise made every missed shot echo through the building in the most awkward way possible. Here's the really embarrassing part. Even NBA players started subtly joining the mockery. Several posted crying laugh emojis under highlights from the game. Others shared clips of the empty sections without adding any commentary because none was needed. When fellow professional athletes are laughing at your championship game, you know the situation has reached rock bottom. Wilson's frustration became content for the meme machine. Every time cameras caught her looking angry or slamming equipment, someone turned it into viral content. Video editors added dramatic music and captions about Asia, realizing nobody was watching. Her emotional breakdown became entertainment for the same fans who were ignoring her actual basketball performance. The contrast with Clark's impact couldn't have been more obvious. Fever Games had generated genuine excitement and organic social media buzz. Fans posted highlight videos because they were actually excited about what they had witnessed. Now the only viral content from the finals was people making fun of how empty and lifeless everything felt. And then came the really harsh reality check. Comment sections under official WNBA posts were filled with people asking when Clark would be back. Others suggested that maybe the league should have invited her to sit courtside just to get people to show up. The jokes were mean, but they were also completely accurate about where fan loyalty actually existed. By the end of the night, the silence in that arena spoke louder than any buzzer or whistle. The WNBA Finals had officially become background noise that most people were actively choosing to ignore. For Wilson, watching her championship moment turn into a punchline had to be absolutely devastating on every possible level. Let's take a moment to rewind and talk about the most shocking part of this entire disaster. WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, who had been front and center taking credit for the league's growth during Clark's rookie season, suddenly went completely silent. No statements about attendance, no explanations for the empty seats, no acknowledgement of the social media roasting happening in real time. For someone who loved the spotlight when things were going well, her disappearing act was absolutely telling. Engelbert had been everywhere during the regular season when Clark was breaking attendance records and driving television ratings through the roof. She gave interviews about the new era of women's basketball and how the league was reaching unprecedented heights. But now that her biggest star wasn't even in the finals and everything was falling apart, she was nowhere to be found. The silence from league headquarters was deafening. Fans noticed immediately and called it out across every social media platform. People remembered how vocal Engelbert had been when ratings soared during Clark's breakout months, how quickly she praised the new wave of fans coming into the game. But now that those same fans had abandoned the finals, she apparently had nothing to say about it. But here's where things get really interesting. Behind the scenes, reports started circulating that NBA Commissioner Adam Silver was quietly furious about the entire situation. The NBA has been the financial backbone keeping the WNBA alive for years, and Silver was reportedly asking some very hard questions about how things had gotten so bad so quickly. Silver had invested millions into building the WNBA's reputation as a legitimate product that could stand on its own. What he saw during Game 2 looked like complete regression back to the days when nobody cared about women's basketball. The embarrassing images from that nearly empty arena reflected directly back on the NBA's brand, and Silver wasn't having any of it. The plot thickens even more when you consider that major sponsors were also starting to ask uncomfortable questions. Companies that had jumped on board during the Caitlin Clark wave wanted assurance that their investment wasn't completely wasted. They weren't buying into a social experiment or charity case. They were investing in a product that was supposed to grow audiences and generate real returns. Sources close to the situation hinted that Silver's office was preparing what they called a comprehensive review of WNBA leadership and marketing direction. Translation: major changes might be coming whether Engelbert liked it or not. If the current commissioner couldn't fix the league's fractured identity and rebuild fan trust, someone else would be brought in to clean up the mess. And here's the kicker. While all this corporate drama was playing out behind closed doors, Wilson continued to spiral on the court. Her body language during post-game interviews screamed frustration and defeat. Instead of taking accountability for the poor fan engagement, she seemed more interested in making excuses and pointing fingers at everyone except herself and her fellow veterans. The contrast between leadership styles was impossible to ignore. Clark had handled media pressure with grace and humility throughout her rookie season. She focused on basketball and let her performance do the talking. Wilson's approach of demanding respect while delivering empty arenas was clearly not working with fans or apparently with league executives either. By the end of the week, speculation was running wild that Silver might personally step in to restructure WNBA leadership if attendance and ratings continued to nosedive. The empty stands weren't just a bad look anymore. They had become a wake-up call that the league's entire foundation was built on shaky ground. Now here's the ultimate truth bomb that nobody in the WNBA wants to admit. The league had built its entire recent success story around one player, and when she wasn't there, the whole house of cards came crashing down. Wilson and the other veterans had spent months complaining about media attention going to Clark, but Game 2 proved exactly why that attention existed in the first place. Clark didn't just bring fans to games, she brought belief back to women's basketball. People who hadn't watched the WNBA in years suddenly cared again. Casual sports fans started learning player names and following storylines. She created a cultural moment that transcended basketball itself. Without her, the league looked exactly like what it had been before she arrived, a niche product that most people ignored. The generational divide couldn't have been clearer. Younger players who had watched Clark's impact were starting to understand what real star power looked like. It wasn't about demanding respect or complaining about coverage. It was about earning attention through performance and connecting with fans in authentic ways. Wilson's approach of entitled frustration was looking more outdated by the minute, but the damage goes way deeper than just one bad game. The empty finals exposed fundamental problems with how the league had been managed and marketed. Instead of embracing the Clark phenomenon and building around it, veteran players and league officials had allowed resentment to fester. They created a divided locker room and fractured fan base right when unity was most needed. Wilson's visible meltdown during Game 2 became a symbol of everything wrong with the WNBA's current direction. While Clark had focused on elevating her teammates and growing the game, Wilson seemed more concerned with protecting her own status and legacy. The fans saw right through it and voted with their wallets and remote controls. The writing is now on the wall for anyone willing to read it. The WNBA can't survive on pride and politics alone. It needs genuine stars who can connect with mainstream audiences and create moments that people actually want to watch. Clark had proven that those fans existed and were willing to support women's basketball when given a reason to care. For Wilson, the reality check was brutal but necessary. She could continue demanding recognition while playing to empty seats, or she could learn from Clark's example and focus on what actually matters to fans. The choice was hers, but the consequences of getting it wrong were now crystal clear for everyone to see. The league's credibility was hanging by a thread after Game 2. Sponsors were questioning their investments. The NBA was reportedly losing patience with the leadership failures. Most importantly, fans were walking away faster than anyone could count them. The WNBA had reached a crossroads where change wasn't just needed, it was absolutely essential for survival. The final nail in the coffin, even with all the drama and embarrassment, Clark's name still trended throughout the entire final series. People weren't talking about who won or lost, they were talking about who wasn't there. That level of impact and influence doesn't come around often in sports, and the WNBA had somehow managed to alienate the one person who could save them from irrelevance. Game 2 will be remembered as the moment when the Emperor's new clothes finally fell off. The WNBA's claims of growth and success were exposed as largely dependent on one rookie who had brought magic back to women's basketball. Without that magic, what remained was a product that most fans simply didn't want to consume. If you enjoyed this breakdown of the WNBA's identity crisis and want to see more content analyzing the intersection of sports, drama, and business, make sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more behind the scenes stories that the mainstream media won't tell you.